In 1991, in the evening after a day of metal detecting and relic hunting, I and my father decided to do some rabbit hunting. We had been in the Simpson Range in the West Desert of Utah, where we had also been searching for a fabled Spanish shield made of gold plate, which was said to reflect on the side of the mountain during the summer months, and could only be seen from only one location in the valley. Legend claimed that during the mid-1800s, a group of Spanish miners had positioned the shield there to reflect from a location in which they had buried supplies. We never found the shield, whose existence was known among some in the Go-Shoot tribes of the region. The shield, or at least a reflection, had once been seen many years ago by a rancher, who was a friend of my father. As luck would have it, cloud cover on that day hampered any chances of seeing a reflection, but we did locate a sunken depression marked off by 3 piles of stones, which formed a triangle around the depression. We had not been prepared to do any serious digging, so we made plans to return some other time. We never did make it back there as the rigors and duties of life consume one's free time. It was an eventful day nonetheless, and one in which my then wife Trudy had pinpointed accurately. Before mounting any expeditions into unknown country to search for treasure or ancient sites, I would often consult Trudy. Trudy, as I had learned long before from my experiences searching for the Lost Dutchman mine in Arizona, had a unique gift in which she could see in her mind's eye certain landscapes and events at places she'd never been before. She had almost always been correct when asked about what to look for, or what to expect during an outing. That day had been no different. On the night before, Trudy had sat down at the kitchen table with me, where I was poring over a set of quadrangle maps. I asked her what she thought. After a long pause she replied,
"The shield is there. It's halfway up the side of a mountain. I see it wedged in rocks, but bushes grow around it. Very hard to see. I don't know what the mountain is called, but it used to have a town built high up and on the other side. Mining, I think. I see the glitter of the sun reflecting off the shield, but you have to be almost in the exact center of the valley to the west to see it at between 5 and 6 p.m. There are old buildings in the valley, too. There's also something buried, but not gold. Tomorrow is not a good time to go because it will cloud up after lunch. The glint from the shield is so faint you need all the sunlight you can get to see it, but when you see it you'll know it's the shield, not other metal or glass, because it will reflect a true gold color, enough to draw your attention to it. On the way out, if you leave tomorrow, you'll take a road you haven't been on before, on the other side of the Ochre Mountains. You're going to have some car trouble, so be prepared. I see you stopped with the hood up. Water, I think. You overheat, but it is not a hot day. You are going to see a big tree like no other tree in the area. It really stands out, and you're drawn to it. I think someone planted it there. Go past the tree about a half mile and turn west into the valley."
Then Trudy suddenly exclaimed,
"Oh God! There is lots of water in that valley, but it's not on the surface. It's flowing way underground now, slowly. It was a very big river when it was above ground, and there is still lots of gold in the valley where the water carried it maybe thousands of years ago. In the middle of the valley, standing about the ancient river below, is where you'll see the shield reflection, but not tomorrow because it get cloudy. There's lots of other stuff to find, because the whole region was used by pioneers when traveling. I feel that they would bury their food and belongings each night when they camped, to protect it from Indians and thieves. A trunk of clothes and old jewelry is still there. The owners left quickly at dawn. Not Indians though, something else. A flash flood, I think. Later, your dad wants to hunt toward the evening before you come home, but you're not in the same area. It's another mountain. Different terrain. Here is where I would advise you not to go far from the truck. I mean it, seriously. Something's in the trees and I see you both getting quite nervous. I don't know what it is, but you're scared because you know it's there but can't find it. It seems to be in one place, then another, and it gets closer. You have guns, but you're not going to see anything. You won't find rabbits or other animals in the area, either. It's really strange because I don't know what it is, more than one maybe. Don't be brave. Go to the car and leave if this happens."
Trudy said more as I queried her about the shield and events, but I don't recall it all. I really didn't know what to think about the strange thing in the trees that she said we'd become afraid of. I was more interested in the treasure. My dad and I left the following morning to find the Spanish shield on Simpson Mountain and do some hunting. I had never been to the Simpson Range, but my dad had many years before. The sky was perfectly clear, and the forecast was for more of the same all day. We traveled to Tooele for gas and goodies, then continued west of the Ochre Mountains. We followed the main road south for some distance, then came to a sign that said, Simpson Springs and Pony Express Trail. This was where we wanted to go, but neither of had been on this road. However, it was hard-packed dirt and looked well-traveled. We assumed the military or mining companies had once improved it. About 20 minutes into the drive, the engine overheated. It was not critical, not in the danger zone, but it was slowly getting hotter. We were close to our destination, so we decided to continue, rather than pulling over and waiting for the engine to cool enough to pop the cap and check the water level. As we came up to Simpson Mountain, we saw an old building that turned out to be the Pony Express stop and along the old Pony Express Trail, which we were now on. This Pony Express station bears the name of explorer, Captain James H. Simpson, a Camp Floyd topographical engineer, who stopped here in 1858, while laying out an overland mail route between Salt Lake City and California. After checking out the old building, and checking the water in the radiator, we continued southward. Out of nowhere we seen a huge old tree nestled in the mouth of a narrow canyon. I had told my dad on the way out everything Trudy had said the night before. So, at the sight of the big old tree, we both looked at each other in amazement. How could Trudy have known? We drove up to the old tree and parked the truck. Next to the tree, we found the half-buried foundation of an old structure. After exploring it a bit, we continued on. At about the center of the range, we found a rough dirt jeep trail heading west into the valley. As we drove, my dad told me that this valley was once part of a big river system from the days after Lake Bonneville had drained. I told him that the river, according to Trudy, was still there, only now deep underground, and that she had said that not only was there a lot of alluvial gold washed by the ancient river, but also that some pioneers had buried something out here and couldn't get it because of a flash flood or something. My dad, whose ancestors had come to Utah pulling a handcart following Brigham Young, said that it was common in those days to bury valuable belongings or food each night when they made camp. Some of the stuff had never been recovered, as the pioneers had been chased off or killed by marauding Indians. Around 2 p.m. in the afternoon, clouds began to fill the sky, just as Trudy had said it would. Any hope of seeing a glint from anything at all would be difficult. We then spent the next few hours poking around and glancing up on the mountain, hoping to see a gold reflection that never appeared. However, we did find a depression marked by a triangle of stones, but, as said earlier, we didn't come to dig. We intended to photograph the reflection of the shield, document our location, and return another day to find the spot where the Spanish had buried supplies. Oh, and to get the shield, of course. Around 5 p.m. we decided to start driving back home. It wouldn't get dark until around 9 p.m. in July, but we wanted to be closer to a major town in case of car trouble. We didn't have mobile phones in those days that the average person could afford. We took the main road back toward Utah County, which would put us in the Tintic Mining District, near the town of Eureka and Ruby Hollow. We had often been relic hunting in this old mining area, and knew it well. My dad suggested we stop and do some rabbit hunting, since we were closer to home now, and still had good daylight left. The Tintic was one of our favorite stomping grounds for relic hunting, deer hunting, and rabbit hunting, and we knew the area well. This time, however, we didn't go to our usual area. It had been many years since I had seen the rock formation called Paul Bunyan's Woodpile, and I told my dad I'd like to see it. We could do some hunting there, also. Our usual hunting grounds were still further north near Eureka. Paul Bunyan's Woodpile is a geological formation that resembles large piles of cut wood. It is actually a volcanic formation that fit together roughly as hexagonal columns running horizontally. Dad had showed it to me when I was much younger. We found the turnoff and drove up the dirt road to the formation. After photographing it, and stretching our legs, we decided to try hunting a short distance back down the dirt road. Picking a suitable place to park, we readied our rifles and gear to begin hunting. We hadn't wandered far before we both heard a strange growling noise coming from somewhere in the trees ahead of us. It was faint at first, then grew slowly louder, as if something was coming towards us. If you've ever heard the sound of black bear growling low to each other, or a mother bear growling to her cubs, this is what it sounded like. We knew there hadn't been bear in the region for many decades, but we also knew that it was possible some had moved back into the area after the mining heyday. We started to backtrack towards the truck in case it was stray bear. Neither of us felt any need to shoot it, and wanted to avoid any self-defense scenario. We had almost arrived back to the truck, while keeping a cautious eye behind us in the direction of the sound. Suddenly another growl came from in the distance. This time it was exactly opposite of where we had heard the first growls. We knew a bear couldn't have encircled us that quickly without being heard tromping through the brush and trees. There must be two of them, and this made us more nervous. There was now something growling from behind and in front of us. The truck had been parked in a fairly clear spot off the dirt road. As we stood near the truck, ready to jump in if needed, we again heard the growls. They seemed closer, one from where we had just come from, and the other one opposite, on the far side of the truck. We had a clear view all around us, including a fair distance into the trees. We could hear the growling sounds, which seemed close enough to be able to see the source, but nothing moved. Then came more growling in the distance to the left. Moments later another resounded on the right. Whatever had been making the sounds had now seemingly encircled us. It came from behind, left, and on the right, and it was getting louder. The sun was hanging quite low by now, and the trees filled with shadows, but it was still light enough to see something the size of a bear, indeed, anything that could make that type of a sound. The growl was so low and strong it could only have been made by an animal as large as a bear. It gave us chills, and still couldn't see anything. My dad, who was an experienced hunter and outdoorsman, unclipped the strap holding his pistol in the holster. I did the same. Instinctively, we knew that if four aggressive animals charged from four different directions in the twilight, we could never stop them with .22 caliber rabbit rifles. Aiming would also be difficult. Our .45 caliber pistols would perform better in close range. By now there seemed to be a dozen animals growling, the original four that were getting uncomfortably close, and now several more in the shadows of the trees around us. We unloaded the round from our rifles and got back into the truck. I had never seen my dad perplexed by anything in the wild, but this time he was genuinely nervous, which didn't make me feel any better. We felt safer in the truck, but were still curious as to what was making the deep growling sounds, which we could hear clearly even from the cab with the windows rolled up. As we sat watching in the growing darkness, one growl seemed to come from just outside my door, and I jumped. Still, there was nothing there. Having had enough, my dad started the truck, turned around and headed back down the dirt road to the paved highway. He watched cautiously in his mirrors. Nothing ever came out onto the road. In all the years of hunting and camping, and with all the other strange events we had experienced, neither of us had ever heard a sound quite like the growling noises that evening near Paul Bunyan's woodpile. Neither did we ever hear anything like it again. Over the years we've come to the conclusion that the sounds must have been some form of beetle that came out on a particular day each year to mate. The sounds, which sounded like deep growling, could have been made by rubbing their wings together like crickets. That would explain why we couldn't see the source of the sound. It made sense, but why, after growing up in Utah, and hunting, fishing, and camping all our lives, had we never heard these beetles before, or after? Personally, I've never been completely satisfied with the beetle theory, but it's a better theory than a herd of invisible black bear coming out for a bite to eat. If you have heard similar sounds in the woods, let me know in the comment section.